He waited in the silence, not for applause, not for rescue, but for the right moment. He heard the noise, the lies, the chaos. He stayed still, because real strength, it doesn't chase the crowd. It listens, it watches, it waits. They thought he was broken, so they laughed, they pitied, they moved on. But he was never gone. No, he was just silent. And in that silence, he sharpened. For a forgotten king to rise again, his strength had to be buried in silence, not lost. They came to steal his birthright, to strip him of his name, to break his spirit. They did everything but take his life. And so he lived, hidden away in the shadows, watching and waiting, listening to the whispers on the wind, feeling the pulse of the world around him. He saw the good, the true, the beautiful, and he held on to it, nurtured it, let it grow until it became his strength. For he was born a king, and kings do not run from battles they are destined to win. He wasn't building revenge, he was building return. Return to what was his, and what would be his again. Return to those who needed him, to those who called out for help, to those who were suffering because the world had grown cold and dark. And he was becoming something more than a king. He was becoming hope. In the stillness of his aloneness, his resolve hardened. He embraced the solitude, the quiet hum of existence, the patient thrum of energy gathering. He didn't need an army. He didn't need weapons. All he needed was a chance. A moment when the scales would tip in favor of light, when the balance of the world would shift on its axis. He waited in the silence, not for applause, not for rescue, but for the right moment. And when it came, he would seize it. He would rise up and claim what was rightfully his. He would bring back the sun. He would be the warmth that chased away the growing frost. He would be the light that pierced the gathering gloom. His people would sing his praises. His name would be on every child's lips. They would tell stories of his courage, of his strength, of his sacrifice. They would hail him as a hero, but he would know the truth. He would carry the scars of his journey, the battles fought, the losses endured, the pain of a broken heart. For he was once betrayed by those he trusted, by those he loved, by those he gave his all to protect. They had taken everything from him, his kingdom, his family, his friends. But what they didn't realize was that in taking everything, they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten the king. But he wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. He was merely biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike back. He was gathering his strength, honing his skills, training his body and mind to become stronger, smarter, more cunning. He was like a coiled spring, ready to unleash his power upon those who had wronged him. He wasn't running away. He was gathering his forces, making alliances, forging new weapons and armor. He was building an army of loyal soldiers who would stand by him through thick and thin, who would fight alongside him until his enemies were vanquished. He wasn't crazy. He was determined. He had a clear vision of what he wanted to achieve, and he was willing to do whatever it took to get there. He was studying his enemies, their strengths and weaknesses, their resources and vulnerabilities. He was planning his moves carefully, making sure that every step he took was a step closer to his ultimate goal. They had underestimated him, thinking that he was weak and helpless. They had thought that he would crumble under the weight of his sorrow, that he would wither away into nothingness. But they were wrong. They had no idea who he really was, what he was capable of, how far he could go. They had forgotten the king, but he would remind them. He would show them who he was. With every beat of his heart, with every breath that rises from the ashes, the king prepares. A forgotten king is waking up. His strength was buried in silence, not lost. They took my crown, but I wasn't crowned yet. They saw a man, but power, true and ancient power, was pulsing in my veins. This world crowns the loud, the cruel, the flashy, but the real king walks alone. He walks in silence, through ashes, through firelight and shadows, not to be seen, but to remember. I remember the betrayals. I remember the storm. I remember the ruin. But I also remember the warmth. I remember the truth. I remember the reason. I do not rise to take revenge. I rise because I was never meant to kneel. The throne was taken. My name was erased, but my soul stayed intact. I am not rising for applause. I am rising because the fire inside me never died. This is not a victory march. This is an awakening, a buried legacy stirring again. The king walks, and the world does not know it yet, but soon it will remember. I wasn't crowned yet, but I carried myself like a king. They saw a man, but power, true and ancient power, was pulsing in my veins. This world crowns the loud, the cruel, the flashy, but the real king walks alone. He walks in silence, through ashes, through firelight and shadows, not to be seen, but to remember. I remember the betrayals. I remember the storm. I remember the ruin. But I also remember the warmth. I remember the truth. I remember the reason. I do not rise to take revenge. I rise because I was never meant to kneel. The throne was taken. My name was erased. But my soul stayed intact. I am not rising for applause. I am rising because the fire inside me never died. This is not a victory march. This is an awakening, a buried legacy stirring again. The king walks, and the world does not know it yet, but soon it will remember. They thought I would stay silent forever. Silence was never surrender. It was preparation. They mistook my absence for defeat, but the king does not vanish. He watches. He waits. Every loss became a lesson. Every betrayal carved clarity. The fire inside me never begged to be seen. It burned, quietly pure, patient, and relentless. They crowned others, loud men, empty men, but I wore no crown because I was the crown. Let them wonder where I've been, because when I walk again, the world will remember how it feels to kneel. Years of quiet, of watching, of listening. They built their statues to me, these hollow men who stumbled into my kingdom and stole my birthright. That which was lost is found. That which was taken is returned. I have waited a long time for this day, for this moment. So let them tremble, let them stare, let them wonder where I've been. Let them cower before the dawn. Let them watch as the light returns. Let them know the end is here. Let them know the silence is ending. For I am no phantom. I am flesh and bone and burning will. And when I walk again, the world will remember how it feels to kneel. They put my name on tombs and raised their voices in songs that were never mine. A man who seemed to carry the weight of ages past on his shoulders. Others shifted uncomfortably, their gazes darting around as if seeking an escape, a distraction from the intensity of the moment. A few, however, held their ground, their eyes locked onto his, daring him to continue, eager to hear what words might tumble from his lips next. They called me a ghost, a whisper, a shadow, said I was madness, a bogeyman, a figment of their fear, said the king was dead. Long live the king. I was never truly gone. How could they forget what they had made? I am the stain on their soul. I am the echo in their bones. I am the spectre that haunts their every waking hour. I am the nightmare that crawls beneath their skin. And when the sun dips low and the shadows grow long, I am the darkness that gathers on their door. Every scar became scripture. This is not the end of a silence. This is the birth of a sound. Not a scream, not a cry, but a steady voice, unshaking, undeniable. The kind of voice that calls kings back from ash. Let them tremble, let them stare. Years they had counted, years since the fall, since the fire, since they thought they'd buried me beneath it all. You cannot erase what was written in fire. Do you truly think that blood forgets its own color? Do you truly think that flesh forgets its kin? Do you truly think that those who hunger for power can quench it with another's name? You know better. And so it ends, like this, in this place. The remnants of that which once burned bright, bright enough to blind you, bright enough to break you, bright enough to remake me. For I have walked in the wilderness. I have watched the seasons turn and turn again, and something stirs in the north, a whisper in the leaves, a tremor in the ground, a rumble in the deep. The old magic stirs. Something new is on the wind, and it carries my name. Do you hear that? Do you feel that? Do you remembers? And in the echo of that memory, hope is reborn. A hush fell over the crowd. Some lowered their heads, unable to meet the gaze of the man who stood before them.